It was the dead of night when Sarah's phone rang, the screen lighting up with a name she never expected to see again. Her heart pounded in her chest as she stared at the caller ID. Tom, the one person she thought she'd never hear from again. Not after the accident. He was gone. Or, at least, that's what she'd been told. It had been exactly 1 year since the crash. 1 year since the world had stopped spinning, and everything she had once taken for granted was ripped away in an instant. Tom, her husband, her partner in everything, had been killed on the highway, his car spinning out of control after hitting a patch of ice. The authorities said it was a freak accident. No foul play, no premonition of what was to come. Just a simple, tragic mistake in the dark of winter. She had buried him in the ground, scattered his ashes in places he had loved, and told herself that she would learn to live without him. But no matter how much time passed, his absence was a constant, gnawing ache. She could never truly move on, not fully. And now, just past midnight, his name was blinking across her phone screen as if nothing had changed. As if the last year had been a cruel illusion. Tom, Sarah whispered, her voice trembling as she reached for the phone. A cold chill raced up her spine as her fingers hovered over the screen. She couldn't make sense of it. Maybe it's a prank, she thought. But even as the thought crossed her mind, a growing sense of dread began to settle in her chest. Against every instinct, she swiped to answer. "Hello," she said, her voice barely a whisper. There was a brief silence before a familiar voice spoke. The voice she had known so well. A voice she hadn't heard in over 365 days. "Sarah, it's me." Her heart skipped a beat. She recognized it immediately. Tom's voice. The same deep, comforting tone that had been her constant companion for years. But it was off. It sounded distorted, like it was coming from far away, through some kind of static. "Tom," she choked, her breath catching in her throat. How is this possible? I know," he interrupted softly. "I know it doesn't make sense, but I needed to talk to you. One last time." A sense of nausea washed over her. One last time? He had to be messing with her. He had to be. What do you mean one last time? "Tom, you're dead. You can't be calling me." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. The static intensified, almost as if the connection was deteriorating. Then, Tom's voice returned, this time quieter, more urgent. "Sarah, listen to me. Something happened that night. It wasn't an accident. There's something you need to know, something I couldn't tell you then. They're watching you." Her blood ran cold. "They're watching you?" What was he talking about? "Who? Who's watching me?" The voice faltered, as if Tom was struggling to find the right words. I can't say too much, but you need to be careful. There are things out there, things that aren't human. They took me, and they'll take you too if you're not careful." Her breath caught in her throat as a chill swept over her body. She glanced toward the darkened hallway of her apartment. Her senses, once dull from grief, suddenly sharpened with fear. She felt watched. She felt like eyes were boring into her from the shadows. "Tom, stop," she gasped. "What are you saying? Are you trying to scare me? You can't be real." There was another pause, longer this time. She thought maybe he had hung up, but then she heard him again, his voice more strained than before. "Sarah, they're coming for you. I don't know how, but they are. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." A sharp, guttural noise echoed from the other side of the line. A distorted screech, like nails dragging across a chalkboard. Tom's voice cut out, replaced by a static noise that drowned out all sound. Before Sarah could react, the line went dead. She stared at the screen, numb with disbelief. Her hands shook as she held the phone, the words from the call still echoing in her mind. "They're coming for you. They're watching you." This wasn't a prank. This wasn't her mind playing tricks. It couldn't be. The fear she felt was too raw, too real. She stumbled backward, trying to regain her composure. Her mind raced. Was it some kind of sick joke? Was someone manipulating her somehow? making her believe that Tom was calling from beyond the grave. But it didn't feel like a joke. Her gaze shifted to the window. The faint light of the street lamps outside cast long shadows across the apartment floor. Something felt off. She didn't know how to explain it, but she felt like she wasn't alone, like someone or something was out there watching her. She had to get out of the apartment. She needed to clear her head, to understand what had just happened. But as she reached for the door, her phone buzzed again. This time, the screen displayed the same name, Tom. Her heart slammed into her ribs. "Hello," she answered, her voice trembling. This time, the voice on the other end was cold, hollow, not Tom's. "Sarah, I warned you." The line went dead once more. The next morning, Sarah found herself spiraling into confusion and fear. She couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. She hadn't slept at all the night before, and every time she closed her eyes, she saw Tom's face, distorted and pale, his lips mouthing words she couldn't hear. She had to get answers. There was only one place she could go, the crash site. The highway was eerily quiet, the silence hanging heavy in the air. She pulled her car off the road, stepping out onto the icy ground where the accident had occurred. She could still see the faint outline of tire tracks in the snow, the faint impression of a crash that had torn apart everything she knew. She stood there for a long moment, her breath fogging in the air, unsure of what she was hoping to find. Her eyes scanned the area, but there was nothing, just an empty stretch of road, the wind howling through the trees. It was just an accident, she told herself. Just an accident. But then, as if